Hey LinkedIn community, Josiah Shelley here from Jan Kelly. I am featuring my first guest ever. On my episodes you might see every week, I've never featured anyone, but my very first guest is Gizele Lodi, a digital strategist from Jan Kelly. I think to play off of what I've been talking about around SEO, I wanted to bring in an expert, dive into a couple questions, and deliver some value to the marketing leaders out there trying to make a bigger impact on their team and in their company. SEO has changed, it's evolved a lot. Maybe you can even talk about a bit of the history of SEO, what's been happening, and what changes you're seeing, so we can kind of start from today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thanks
for having me. Basically what we've been seeing today is the change from the perspective where we pretty much, when we worked with SEO, we have this important role of keywords and just finding the proper keywords that would help you rank in the search results on the Google page, which was pretty much composed of links, a lot of blue links going all the way down the page, and then you had your ads at the beginning, but then pretty much blue links, and you were really aiming to be at the top of the page. What happens now that the user is actually changing their behavior and they're actually getting more sophisticated and used with search, right? Search is part of their day-to-day life. So people were actually performing more complex search terms and actually from different devices. So not only from mobile, but also from wearables, from their home devices, from cars, and that's just the beginning probably. And then when you think about it, it's pretty much, it becomes a conversational situation more than actually stopping and trying to figure out how you type in on the search box. And that's the big change. So it goes from a context where you have to really search the correct keywords and stuff your content to a point where you actually have to really provide value to the user and compete on that real state that Google is ever changing. So now you just have a few spaces where you can actually rank for with the correct context. So for example, if I'm at home and I have on my Google device and I'm talking to it, before I was pretty much on the beginning, I was pretty much trying to figure out how that worked. And then to me, I would just go, okay, Google, recipe for cake, like something I was very like uncomfortable with the situation. Whereas now it's like, it's almost my assistant, and I'm sure it's like that for everybody. Across all ages. So now I go and just say, okay, Google, fetch me a recipe for chicken with rosemary coming from Jamaica. I don't know. It can be very, very narrow on that, and then that changes because now what Google has to do is actually understand which context you're actually trying to get and provide you the value to that question, which is not keyword related anymore. It's context. So the algorithm has really changed. Last year, we saw a lot of updates across the past 18 to 24 months. We've seen consistently progress in terms of the algorithm trying to really contextualize search and really be smart about understanding. Sometimes you say a keyword, but the results would not even mention that keyword because it really understands what you want. And that's the biggest change. So people really have to try to take a step back and really look at their content and what the value they're providing to the user to see if they're actually really answering the questions that people have. So we really have to understand who you're talking to even more than before.
Right. And let's talk about the SERP page. So a search engine result page, if I type in a query, and it gives me a list of links. What's going on with that SERP page? Because like I see a bunch of ads, I see a bunch of things happening, and as a brand, I need to figure out like how do I get closest to the top?
Absolutely.
And it's not just about paying anymore. So I'm trying to figure it out. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So what is changing is Google, it's looking at the SERP page now, given that context where people are actually trying to really get the correct answer. Like people have no patience anymore, right? And even if you think about the device pulling just the best results, like the Google Home would just provide you with the best results. Think real estate, that's just one result out of like the so many options we have out there. So when you look at the search results page, it's really getting to the point where you actually have elements, right? So you have a few items blended in which are paid, which Google is really trying to blend in with results. So it's pretty like, it's hard for you to sometimes to, if you don't really pay attention to say which one is actually paid and which is not. But other than that, the results are really actually very, you see the results on like a box, almost like just being very simplistic here. You say, if you're asking a question, your results actually showing it at a box, and then you have like half of the page with boxes like trying to answer your questions, and then at the very bottom you have a few links. So there's just so much less space for you to appear as a brand. So what you have to do as a brand, really understand what you actually try to rank for in terms of your user need. So brands need to understand that, first of all, the search, it's not a one point in time situation where the user out of a sudden will have the opportunity of a lifetime to find you. That's not what it is. So because of that, you actually have to work towards building your brand outside of the search results to actually build up your strength and keep the share of mind of your consumer. And then once you try to actually be on the SERP, you have to be very accurate and look at purely your value proposition, what you're trying to offer to your user, and really work your content. That's pretty much. And then on the flip side, you also have to make sure that you understand what format people are actually expecting you to provide them, and then work on the technical side to make your results look like the format. So by format, I mean, for example, if I'm looking for a step-by-step solution, so I'm a paint, just regular spray paint brand, and I know that my user wants a step-by-step response to a query that they're actually performing a project or something.
Right, like a how-to.
Like a how-to.
Yeah.
You have to actually, on the technical end, tell Google that your piece of content is a how-to content through code. So basically what we call schema markups. So there's ways on the technical end that you actually can identify a few content that you build that answer the user's question, but also enable it on the technical end to actually be identified by Google as that type of content.
So we're going to come back to schema markup. What I want to talk about, because you mentioned it kind of briefly, but I think it'll have a huge impact for any brand that's out there today. So the SERP pitch, it used to be from a desktop perspective, my 15 by 4-inch screen or whatever, and I'd type in my result and I'd see everything there. Now, mobile and tablet, and now we're talking about smart home devices, perhaps even search happening in cars.
Yes.
So the SERP result page is basically going away or being transformed into many different forms based on what context the user's in, is what I hear. So how does this impact Google or all these big brands when their business model is going to change? They make money when I click the ad. That's what they want me to do.
Absolutely,
Majority of Google's revenue is based on that. So now I've got smart devices that don't have SERP pages. Like, what happens here? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, that's a very tricky on the business end. And
can you predict the future for me of Google? That would be super helpful.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, everybody's trying to do that, and it's really interesting to see. Obviously, the paid perspective is not going to go away, and they probably eventually blend that in with the ability for you to rank for voice, which is now pretty much organic and has this perspective of like providing the value. But I'm sure they're working that out, because that's just the reality. People are just too busy to stop in just performance search regularly, so they will eventually get away from it. So I think when you think about like what really brands need to focus, it's actually look at this as an opportunity to get out of the fight for cost per click situation where you actually just paying your way in, and actually focus on who you want to be and who you're selling to, and actually providing getting those opportunities to be where the user are, where like your users are, with valuable information. That's actually, to me, it's an opportunity that's probably not going to stay like this forever, but it's a good start for brands to actually start to tackle.
And I guess it's a bit uncharted territory.
Yes.
As to what,
for most, yeah.
And what the future is going to look like, and how much opportunity there is within ranking in voice search or in a different environment.
Yeah.
Which should be kind of interesting. So back to schema markup.
Yeah.
So you said there's some code that I can put on my site that's going to tell Google what the content is about.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning, like, if it's a how-to, I could put some code on that how-to page that would tell Google it's a step-by-step.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work, and what's the importance of it? How do I actually action that? How do I do that? Tell me more about schema markup.
So schema is getting one of the most important things now for SEO, just because it's a duality right now. The way I see SEO working now in all of this context, it's pretty much you're really focusing on providing content. So you have content on one end, which is pretty hard to get to the good content, and then you have on the flip side, you have your technical features that you have to make sure you actually tackle in order to show your content. Because if you have a good content but your site is slow, or it doesn't have the proper schema, or like a lot of meta descriptions and a lot of metadata, I know this might sound a little bit out of this world for a lot of people, but it's just like technical requirements for you to show. Even your best content might not show. And if you have the good setup for your technical SEO, but you have shallow content, you're not going to show it either way.
Okay.
So you really have to tackle both at the same time.
So the technical parts of SEO, like schema markup, almost enable content to have an opportunity to rank and actually be found
in that incredible competitive environment, right? So where you actually, before you had an opportunity to show on the first page, you had probably like at least 10, right? If you go down the page, at least 10 good ones that you actually would be able to. Now you have just the one opportunity, like how you actually get to that point, right? So it's really getting the best content, and then schema will be an enabler for this. So looking at schema, and it's getting more and more evolved, like with time. There is a library today of types of codes or types of things that you can tell Google what type of content you have. So video, image, how-tos, lists, or historical information. Like there is a lot of address, local, listings. There's it goes on and on and on, and it's ever evolving. So what schema really is, it's like, okay, I have this page with great content, given that you created a great content,
course.
right? And then I know who I'm talking to, and I know that my competitor actually has a schema markup for that and that feature. So they're actually showing. So what do I have to do as a brand? I actually have to overcome them in terms of the quality of the content they are delivering, and then to mark up all the elements that I have on my page to be able to rank for and respond to the query, right? So what will be a good way to start? It's really get a tool. Like there's free tools for that. There's a Google Chrome extension which you just add to your Chrome if you're a Chrome user, and then you can basically just go to any website, yours or your competitors, and just try to understand what they have, and then go back to your dev and then just ask them to add those pieces of code for you.
So let me just clarify, because if I have a website with 1,000 pages, are you suggesting I go through each page and add code to tell Google, or how do I handle that?
Yeah, you go into prioritize, right? You just start slow if you just focusing on your top priority pages, and then you go start to kind of understand what you actually have the opportunity to rank for and what you actually want to rank for, and go one by one. Or you can go, then once you evolve with that, you can go site-wide and try to expand little by little. But I would recommend for people just getting started to actually go to your top pages, the pages that are more important to you in terms of delivering your goals, and just start from there.
Okay. And then are there tools, if I have an e-commerce website with 100,000 pages, like is there any other options? If I try it on a few pages, I see some good results, then can I use something else?
Yes, you can. There's more options for paid, right? So we actually know of a Schema app, which is an opportunity for you to actually do a self-service analysis and just act on it. Your dev can work on it, or you can actually get them to work for you. So either way, you can try to tackle that.
So I guess you can just Google Schema app. Look that up.
Yes.
Is that right?
It's a good tool.
Cool. So SEO, we talked a little bit about schema markup. We talked about voice search, what's happening there. I liked how you started this talking about the user.
Yeah.
The user is at the center of what a good SEO strategy should be focused on. Mm-hmm. What else is happening from a user perspective? What different habits, what are the things that are changing beyond just voice search? What things should I pay attention to?
Yeah, I think overall it's just, when you think about the user, it's just the complexity of their lives and how now when you compare it to the user before, when you look at it like a user journey, for example, there's really no like user journey. It's really hard to narrow down to a user journey these days because people are just so exposed to so many touch points on their day-to-day. The internet has really made it so complex.
Right, it's not as simple as like stage one of your user journey, stage two, stage three.
Yeah, it's just like my life. I get like exposed to so many things at the same time. I don't even know I was exposed to things. And then at a point, I'm just like in my bed, like laying down and going through my Facebook, and I remember I had to buy something because I saw a trigger on my friend's timeline, and then I go on Amazon and just buy just because I remembered. So it's just so fluid and so complex. So and people have no patience, right? Like this is the biggest, one of the biggest change too. You can't wait. Like when you think about, again, going back to who you are and as a brand and what are you trying to achieve, think about it. Like people have no patience. So if you're actually creating content, either on a website or your social media, wherever you are, you have to be very understanding that people will just pretty much just go through your content pretty quick. So if you really want to reach them, you have to be very pragmatic and very focused and think that you have 1 second to shine and just what you can do with that.
And if anyone's like me, I jump on a piece of content, I scroll through it pretty fast. Like I'm looking at headlines, like big key topics, and then I'm kind of skimming, and then I'm deciding, okay, am I gonna read more about that or read more about that? Yeah. What are some ways to drive engagement on a page? Like how do I keep someone? Like if you're saying we're so busy, we have all these messages coming at us, like how do we actually capture attention?
Yeah, so attention is pretty much related to visual cues and to direct meaning, right? So really go back to, and it sounds like I'm broken machine going back to the same point again, but like it's really like, okay, if people are looking for a how-to, don't try to like sell your product and talk about all the features of your product. Stop. Like just be mindful of what you're really trying to achieve at that point. That's the first step. Then the second step is visual cues. So don't try to stuff with words and like just because you have to actually create like this long piece of content. Just give them visual cues, like you said. Just provide like stats or things that are relevant, or titles or bullet points, or like a little visual graphic or something that really helps. It's just like whatever it's easier on the eyes, and also if you're thinking like small devices as well, whatever it's easier for them to actually just go through on their small screens.
That's cool. And I think, attention is the currency.
Yeah.
Like if we can actually capture and hold attention, like if somebody's still watching this video, we're doing a good job.
Yes, exactly.
Because there's so much content out there for people to consume. I think it's really important when we think about user journey, like you said, don't try to sell right away. Like allow the user to drive their kind of purchase and just enable them to purchase by giving them the content they're already looking for.
Yeah.
And I think what I hear you over and over saying is just, how do we be ruthlessly focused on the user and what they need? So we can provide value, so we can deliver content that serves their purpose, whatever context they're in, because they may be at night lying on their bed with their phone, and if you're like me, I drop it on my face. But like, we just have to consider the context they're in and make sure we're always delivering value.
Yeah, you're ultimately the helper. You're there to help. You're not there to sell. It's a different perspective now. You're just helping. And the more you help, the more they will acknowledge and understand that you're an option for them.
And I heard also a good perspective is that as a marketer, we're the educator and sales is the advisor. And to kind of keep the educator hat on is how do we just provide as much value as possible for those searchers, because our competitors are trying to rank too, right?
Yes.
For all their content.
Yes.
So it's like,
for sure,
we've got to go above and beyond to make sure we're really delivering on those user needs.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's a constant effort, right? It's not a point in time situation. Okay, now I have the perfect content and people are clicking, but be mindful, like you said, the other way to actually help them and really trying to have meaningful content, maybe you tweak the format of your content, like video, for example, or podcast, or whatever format that will, if they're on the go and they're on their cars and you need to educate them on something, just do a podcast. Doesn't really have to be a website content or just a traditional content. Think of it like touch points more.
Cool. What would a quick win be for a brand building out a new content page? They're saying like, what type of content should I be building today, or just something off the bat? Any quick wins for us in that regard?
So I think the key point, again, me talking about the content and how do you please the audience, it's just understanding what are the queries that you're trying to solve, right? So how do you do query research for voice or for this new context, right, of people more and more having long questions and then very specific questions. So one way to tackle this, it's pretty much going back to your very own free data for your own resources, which could be either Google Search Console, if you have a website, or even Google Analytics if they're connected. So if you go to Google Search Console, you can easily just go and go to the performance report, and then you filter your data by, you actually put a filter on mobile, because typically these types of queries will be more mobile, right? And then you just select from the lowest impressions to the highest. So then you see queries that are not really still reaching a lot of people, but are more contextualized and provide like what we call long tail, which is like a typical long form of query. And what you can do is just pretty much try to look through those results and try to understand what seems to be a more human conversational approach. Those are your typical true full of intent questions. So you get those queries and you start to build content around that. Just quick wins, just see if it matches with your goals. And then if it does, just start to create content around that. That's a very feasible way to actually create your an actionable result. Start to see results right away. And then once you narrow down to those queries, you can actually create a simple FAQ page.
Okay, yeah.
which a lot of people don't like.
I used to hate FAQs.
Me too, actually.
Like the accordion, you're like clicking and it's expanding and shrinking. It was quite annoying.
Yeah, and before it was mostly like just like going through pretty much what types of questions came through your phone, right? Your client service, and then just trying to answer as much, but it wasn't really like used in a strategic way. What you can do now on the flip side, so Google is really ranking. So one of the factors that actually will allow you to show on the featured snippets, it's actually a FAQ format. So if you're actually using question as a title of your content, right? That will tell Google that actually this has potential to answer a question.
Right.
It's a kind of a cue for Google. So what you do, you actually use those kind of queries that you did the research previously and create a little FAQ with a very objective, sounding human. No, don't try to be very sophisticated. Like a lot of people go wrong because they try to be super sophisticated. They don't sound like a human conversation almost, right?
Right.
And that's very important for Google. Grammatically correct. You have to make sure it's error-free, sounds very conversational. That's the way you can actually start to rank for the featured snippet.
It's awesome.
2 quick, easy ways.
Great quick wins.
Yeah.
So almost done. We're going to finish here, but I want to ask one more question. Just your thoughts around voice search and e-commerce, right? Are we at the point where we're buying stuff with our voices? How important is that as a brand if I sell services or products or whatever that looks like? How should I be thinking about e-commerce as a part of voice search and all these things that are changing in SEO?
Yeah, and that's really, really interesting because, again, going back to my own experience, when I first got my home devices, I was like, no way I'm connecting this to any sort of Amazon, because I have both. I have Alexa and I have Google. Okay. So no way I'm connecting Alexa to my actually like account or allowing that to purchase anything. But then as you evolve and you start to see the value, you actually, but I could use, like, if I'm like in a hurry, like, Alexa, buy this for me. Like, it starts to make more of a play of helping you, supporting you to your journey. That being said, search is actually expected to reach 50% of the queries of the search.
Voice search.
This year.
Wow.
Yeah, voice search, and which is like really interesting. And I think the speed is just gonna go like so much faster than we think. And then when you think about e-commerce, already 15% of the people are already buying. So from those people that are actually using voice, they're already buying. So it's a given almost, like you really have to optimize for it, because people are kind of going from a stage where they were like, no way, I'm not doing this, to actually at a point where they're actually using voice as their assistant to perform like simple purchases. So it's definitely something brands need to understand and start to tackle.
It's awesome. And I love that you take the perspective of it's an opportunity for brands.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, this is kind of uncharted territory. It's some white space that we can start to test and learn and figure out, like, what are users doing? Are we providing value to them? Is this helpful? I know there's like Alexa skills. You can actually kind of build apps that communicate with the assistants, so that way people can ask questions and connect it to apps. So that's quite cool. So that's really interesting.
Yes.
This has been a ton of fun.
Yes,
Gizele, thank you so much for
My
joining
pleasure.
me on my very first episode with someone else, which is very, very cool.
Yeah.
And I think you provide a lot of value to people who are running marketing teams or leading marketing at brands, because SEO is kind of it's very hard to understand and pin down and prioritize. Like, what should you do and should you not do?
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't do everything. We should be doing these small intentional pieces that you said are being more strategic. So thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. And we'll see you at the next episode.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you.
Gizele.
Bye.